Hi guys, so Hakurei turnips are in season right now, and that's why this video couldn't wait for good production values. The camera work and narration might be a little sloppy, but the recipe is fantastic. I made it in both of my classes this past Saturday, and it was everybody's favorite dish. So if you've had a bad experience with turnips before and find them bitter and aggressive, now this turnip, this little Japanese turnip, does not have a bitter bone in its body. It tastes like butterscotch. It's absolutely delicious, and the greens are usable too. We're gonna use both the roots and the greens. If you can't wash your turnips right away, make sure you put a bag over the greens as well as the roots, because otherwise the greens will wilt in your fridge. But if possible, try to wash them as soon as you get them home. The roots you can leave unwashed, but the greens really need processing. There are a couple of inches of stems near the roots that tend to be very sandy and hard to wash, so I prefer to cut them off around here and discard this part of the stem. And the leaves we're gonna wash and use. In order to fit them into my salad spinner, I'm gonna cut them in half like this. So here we go. I'm gonna dump the first batch of my greens in. It's good not to crowd your salad spinner, because otherwise they won't wash and definitely won't dry very well. Drying is particularly important to do in small batches. And then you want to agitate them, because there is often sand stuck in here in the stems. So get in there with your hands and rub very, very well. So you want to change the water a couple of times until it runs clean, and spin your greens dry. Dump them onto a paper towel, wrap them up, put them into an airtight container or a plastic bag, and put in the fridge. This way they will last for several days, maybe even a week if you got them at the farm and they're really fresh. The roots don't need washing right away. You can put them into a plastic bag and store them unwashed in your fridge. And then when you're ready to cook them, you can trim them and wash them. The easiest knife to trim them with is this little paring knife. Cut off the top of the stems, cut off the little tail, and if there is bumps and dirt here that's really caked in, you can just trim that a little bit and rinse your turnips. Before you cook them, you need to dry them very thoroughly to make sure that they brown. Remember, water is the enemy of browning. If your turnips are really little, you can just cut them into quarters. And if they're on the big side, you might cut them into more pieces, maybe sixths or eighths. Also, inspect them for blemishes and cut off any that you see. Put all your turnips onto a baking sheet that fits them in a single layer. Sprinkle them with salt and some olive oil. Mix around to coat them thoroughly and place them flat side down onto your baking sheet to maximize the browning. And then put them in the oven at 425 with convection or 450 without convection. Here we go, for about 20 minutes, and then we'll stir them and see how they're doing. And yes, this is a new toy. I just got myself a little Breville toaster oven, and so far I really love it. And here are our turnips. If you use the convection fan, they might brown on top as well as on the bottom. And if you didn't, they'll only brown on the bottom. Both are perfectly fine. In the end, they'll taste good whichever way you got the browning. So give them a stir. If you see any pale ones, the ones that are pale on both sides, try to get them into the corners or towards the outside of the baking sheet so that they have a chance to brown. Generally, the outside of the baking sheet browns a lot faster than the inside of the baking sheet. And we're gonna put them back in the oven for another maybe 7-10 minutes until we get a little bit more color and until they get completely tender. And now my turnips are done. They're nicely browned, and if I take a fork and poke even the biggest, thickest piece, it goes right through. When in doubt, cook them more rather than less. You don't want them crunchy or crisp tender. You want them, nice and soft. Dump all these turnips into a blender. Add some heavy cream. You want just enough to get the turnips to move in the blender, so I usually go about halfway. Add a dollop of miso paste. I'm using white miso here. This will give you sweetness, saltiness, and umami. But you can definitely skip it. Also, if you don't want to use something as heavy as cream, you can just add a little water. Basically anything to help your turnips move in the blender. And then puree. This looks nice. If you wanted to turn them into a soup, you could add even more liquid, but I'm serving them as a puree, so I'm happy with this. This puree can be made way in advance and reheated very easily, either in a microwave or on the stovetop on low heat. I prefer to let my leaves sit in the fridge for at least a few hours so that the paper towel has a chance to absorb the remaining moisture. This way they will absorb the dressing a lot better. For the dressing, we'll need some sweetness, acidity, garlic, and olive oil. I like to use pomegranate molasses as my sweetness and acidity component. This way I get to kill two birds with one stone. But you can also replace it with half and half mixture of balsamic vinegar and honey, or balsamic vinegar and maple syrup. We just need a little bit, like a teaspoon or two. The garlic needs to be pureed into a completely smooth paste, and the easiest way to do this is the microplane zester. Let's add a generous pinch of salt and some olive oil, just a couple of teaspoons. Grab a fork and give it all a mix. Keep mixing until this mixture is completely emulsified and smooth. There'll be no more oil oozing out of it. Coat your greens in your dressing. Since it's a pretty viscous dressing, it's hard to get out of this little bowl, so I'll take some greens and use them to wipe out my bowl. And then get in here with your hands and toss it very, very thoroughly. You don't want to be as aggressive as when mixing kale, but it's okay to be more aggressive than when mixing arugula or say lettuce. All right, taste your greens for salt and acidity. I think I need a little bit more salt. Don't worry if your greens wilt a little bit. You want them to taste intensely garlicky, acidic, salty, and kind of like marinated, as if they're cooked but not quite cooked. All right, let's plate it up. You can make this as simple or fancy as you want. You could add some sauteed apples on top or toasted pine nuts or walnuts, but today I wanted to show you the most basic way to serve this. And of course, you don't have to puree the roots. You could leave the roots whole. And another option is to reverse it, to puree the greens and serve the root part in pieces. So what's so great about this dish is the contrast of the butterscotchy, really mild and mellow root with this garlicky, intense greens. You could serve a dish like this as the first course, as a salad of sorts, or you could top it with a piece of fish or chicken or duck or pork. Pork confit is fantastic with this, and make this a whole meal.